In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint some watercolor floral basics. I'm excited about it. I hope you are too, so let's get right into it. You will need watercolor paper. This brand that I use is very good for what I do. I will link it down in the description below, but it's 16 sheets, 9 by 12 inches. A clean paint palette. A round tip paintbrush. I prefer these for watercolor paintings, and once again I'll link everything down below, but this is the brand I'm using today. Some watercolor paints. I found these ones at Walmart and they've lasted forever, so I would totally recommend just buying tubes of watercolor paint. Here I'm mixing some red and yellow and a little bit of water. I also added in some white, and once you're done mixing, you can put some water in the little section next to it and just dip back and forth till you get a good consistency of paint. We're going to start by making a small flower shape, and the key for watercolor that I have found is to not connect the lines too much. Once you do that, you're just going to get sort of a blob, and we don't want that. We want pretty delicate flowers. So I'm just doing a bowl shape with random lines going up and curved, and at the top I did create a little upper petal. Here on the sides I'm adding some wispy little petals, and you can do little chunks, long thin lines, but make sure you curve in the direction of the flower. Then at the bottom we want it to appear that it's opening, so I'm just going to paint some large loose petals at the bottom. Before my paint's dry, I'm going to add some more of that same color just to the edges and fade it into my petals. This gives some depth, and the neat thing about watercolor is when you want to add more petals, all you have to do is add another layer right on top and you'll get a different shade of paint. It'll be darker, it'll be more vibrant than your first layer, so I really like that. Here is a little trick. If you have tissue, paper towels, napkins, toilet paper even, you can just dab it on your painting while it's still wet and it'll give a faded look, so it brightens up your design a little bit. Now with a fine tip paintbrush, I'm dipping into our original mixing section and I'm making some very small little lines in the center and just around my flower. You'll see as I go on. But this just gives another layer, and you don't have to do this if you're wanting to go for more of that faded watercolor look, but I love adding detail where I can. So definitely want to keep in mind that less is more. You don't want to add too much to where it's overwhelming, but just a hint. Now I'm going in with a Tombow Brush Pen. These are my favorite marker / brush pens ever. They are very great for details, they don't bleed through paper, and here I'm just going to use it to add a little center to my flower by making some random scattered dots. And we're done with the first flower. I absolutely love this design. It's so gorgeous. So now we're going to move on to our next florals. This time I'm going to add some red paint to our original paint section on our palette. Here I just want to get a reddish pink color, but pretty vibrant. So as you can see, my paint is getting pretty thick right now, but I'll add some more water and it'll last us like the rest of this video. So on the section next to it, I'm putting my water, and then I'll just dip into that paint mixture and put it into my water, sort of diluting the paint. With this red paint, I'm going to make several buds. So what I do is an oval shape and the top is kind of rough. And then to create more depth, first of all, I don't connect the lines too much inside my oval shape, but I'll make another layer of petals following a diagonal line on that base. So here I'm making the base and I'm following the edge of that base to create sort of an opening on our buds. So we're going to use that napkin slash tissue slash whatever you have in your house to brighten up our flowers once again. I love doing this trick. It totally lightens the design. So while that dries, I'm going to grab some of our original paint section mixture, add some white in there, and this is going to be for our next flower. Once again, I'm going to add some water into the section next to our paint mixture, and then I'm going to dip back and forth till I get the consistency I'm looking for. Here I'm adding some of that orange-yellow color from our first flower to warm up the tone of paint I'm working with. Now back to our red flowers, I'm going to add another layer of that red paint to create some more depth. Now we're going to make a rose with our blush color, and I'm starting at the center, just making circular paint strokes, and I'm avoiding connecting the lines too much. This really gives you the perception that there's separate petals and depth. As you get towards the outer edge of your petal, you're going to want to continue making larger petals. Here I am making a second rose, and one thing I want to point out that you can avoid is overworking your paper. So unlike a canvas, since we are working with paper and with water, the paper eventually can start to crumble if you do too many brush strokes or add too much water to that design. Now that my paint dried, I'm adding another layer of pink to our rose petals, and this is just going to give us some depth and a little more detail. Here I'm adding some green to our paint palette because we're going to start making our leaves. I don't really care for this shade of green, so I'm adding in some yellow from our original flower, and this is going to warm up the color a little bit. I still wasn't satisfied with the color, so I ended up adding some white to that paint palette and a little bit of water. Here I am just making my brush tip very pointed. I do this occasionally throughout my design just so I can get cleaner lines. So we're going to start with the tip of our paintbrush and then press down as we get to the center and create another brush stroke that is curved going towards the same direction, and then with the tip of our brush we finish off the point. Once again, you start with the point of your brush, press down in the center, and taper back at the top. I added a little bit more green to our leaves. This is just, once again, for detail and depth. I didn't have any black watercolor paint, so a little trick is to use acrylic paint and mix a lot of water into it. From there, I mixed that black into my green paint and got this lovely shade of green. So this is going to be the stems for our red little rosebuds. Sort of want to create a curved line going into the center. I thought some long leaves would look good with these, so here I'm just doing some random long thin leaves. Once I finished my whole painting, I decided to use this dark green color to cover up the bright green color of our first leaves. So if you want to do that, that's totally optional. And really with this painting, you can use any colors that you like. The leaves could even be beige with purple flowers. But here's the finished design. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. There's also a bell right next to that if you want to get notified every time that we post a new video. Until next time, and as always, happy painting.